If you're like most people, you probably haven't realized that fish farm finance is completely unfixed at the moment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had this whole intro about like from Frankfurt to Faisalabad. And I don't know. Alliteration is neat. But so is this episode. I'm Sloan Artel. This is the Free Money Podcast, and we're talking about fish farm finance. Our guest is Grant Cavanaugh. He is the guy you'd want to talk to about this. We'll talk to him about how fish farms differ from traditional fishing, where you take the boat into the ocean and like get fish that way, and the sustainability difference between aquaculture and traditional fishing. Folks who are, watched Seaspiracy and various other things might be aware that fishing fleets are huge contributors to ocean microplastics. Then we'll talk about the return equation, why private equity folks and institutional investors haven't like crowded in and reduced returns over time, and what sorts of opportunities there are to deploy catalytic capital in aquaculture. Then, as usual, we take questions from you, which is just, I think, so cool of us, right? Like, accessible, hello. If you want to ask a question, freemoneypod@gmail.com at your convenience. This week, we answer, how much stock do you put into those various pension indices that compare various countries on a range of things? Can you think of a time when someone really put the douche in fiduciary? What was and is the circumstance? And would you ever grow mushrooms? These are all questions that are at the center of every investment committee's deliberations right now. Thank you for joining us for another delightfully investable episode of the Free Money Podcast. I'll catch you on the other side of the disclaimer. Take it away, Sharkbait.
Ahoy, Free Money Podcast listeners! I'm Sharkbait Buckley, the Disclosure Pirate, and I'm here to set ye straight about what's going on with this here show. Sloan Artel works for Invest Vegan LLC, a New York registered investment advisor. Ashby Monk works for Stanford University, Adapar, Future Proof, Long Game, and various startups. All opinions expressed by either Sloan or Ashby are entirely their own, and do not reflect the opinions of their crew or any company. Clients who invest vegan may maintain positions in securities and strategies discussed in this podcast. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Invest Vegan and its representatives are properly licensed or exempted and a client agreement has been executed. Arr.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Welcome to the Free Money Podcast, where we give you the Brooklyn Bay Area consensus about the coughing right as we.
What are we doing? We're craving, Sloan. Oh,
we're craving. Yeah, I got a little too excited there, and my voice couldn't take it.
It's because I think, Sloan, the craving is real.
Yeah,
people have the craving.
I do. And podcasting is an athletic pursuit. I don't think that many people give it credit for that.
That's true. It is. You have to kind of get yourself pumped up a little bit.
Yep.
If you were feeling down, you got to look at the mirror and say, you're smart enough.
Have you ever done affirmations?
No, I haven't. But I have sung Man in the Mirror very loud to myself.
Aww.
Gonna make a difference.
Gonna make it right. I mean, the crazy thing about affirmations is that they actually do work. Which
really?
Is like, it's so. I mean, like it. It makes sense that we're basically monkeys, and we can just sort of be like, I deserve this, and I'm smart and talented, and whatever. But
That's
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
all I can think of is the U.S. senator who used to just be a comedian.
Yep.
Al Franken staring at the mirror on SNL. You're good enough. And gosh darn it, people like you, or something like that.
What's amazing about that character is that their outfit has stayed roughly the same amount of cool until now, when it has become the coolest thing in the entire world.
Wasn't it just a sweater?
Yeah, it's a sweater, but it's a special kind of sweater. You can't just buy any sweater and achieve that
what
level
he
of
was
enduring
going
cooldown.
with.
Yeah. You got to get a Normcore precision guided missile into the sweater department.
That's
to
hilarious.
Get that kind of stuff.
That's hilarious. How's off the top here? You doing okay?
Yeah, we recover. Did we talk about dead friends last time? I forget.
I think that was technically 2 episodes ago.
That was
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like this is the dead friends and related parties, and off
the top here, we just take care of the business.
Yeah,
I know you lost somebody close to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, one of my best friends in high school, my roommate, died of a heart attack unexpectedly recently, and like this episode was actually rescheduled. So we got to well thank you, thank Grant, thank the fam and the free money family for bearing with us as I was too sad.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's important to talk about grieving, though. I mean, like you set the example, without realizing that we were entering a new death-related phase on the on the Free Money podcast a couple of episodes ago.
We're all going to die, Sloan.
Yep.
We are. I mean, I don't know if the listeners are aware of that. And sometimes, there's a whole lot of work in like the Zen world that is like just acknowledging that we are here for a period of time is empowering. And there's nothing like having somebody close to you, And so I heard this great interview with Colbert once where he was like, I am actually grateful of all the losses I've had. And I was like, that sounds crazy. But I think I am now too. Like, it is grounding. It is a reminder of how precious this all is. And I take, for example, this moment, Sloan, more.
Yeah.
I have more like compassion and more interest in being here in this moment than maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that is totally real. Like, once you live long enough to have seen some shit.
Yeah, because we didn't live through NAM. You know what I mean? We weren't in the shit.
Yeah, we got soft hands here on the Free Money podcast.
Actually, because we garden, we got some good calluses. Good calluses.
You got to use the nitrile gloves, I mean.
Oh, I got to get those.
Yeah.
Tip. That's your tip today.
I'm just, I abound with gardening wisdom today. It's spring. I am the very spirit of Demeter herself. Let's get to the news, though.
I got news. I did.
Enough about death. Let's talk about actuarial.
No, this one is, here we go, the country of Mozambique.
Ooh.
Now, Sloan, do you know where that is, that country? No,
Mozambique?
Google.
I don't.
I admit that the reason I ask you that is because I caught myself out. I was like, I think it's, I know it's sub-Saharan Africa, but I think it's over there down on the left. I was wrong. It's on the right.
Yep.
It borders Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And so Mozambique is, for those of you that don't know, the 3rd poorest country in the world. And yet it has intended to establish a sovereign wealth fund for some time now. And now that their natural gas exports are about to come online, the sovereign fund will be taking deposits by October. And I think it was the Minister of Finance, Max Tonella. We're doing our research.
Good name.
Very well buttoned up story here. Max says his fund could be $96 billion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
NBD. That seems a little weirdly precise for like obviously plucked out. I mean, like,
I kept trying to figure out, is this like the 40-year projection, like our net zero friends? Is this like soon? Either way, I couldn't figure that out because I only looked at one story. So I didn't really follow that thread of the story all the way to the end. But they're talking about 96 billion. Some people might like to know that these like low-income countries, poor countries, establish these funds to avoid what is called Dutch disease, which goes back to the Netherlands and the realization that if you are a commodity exporter, you can harm the value of your currency, increase the value of your currency, which harms your domestic exports.
Yeah, the resource curse.
The resource curse. Yeah, that's the Dutch disease. You know about that.
Yep.
And so you establish these funds, you hold the assets offshore, and you only onshore the assets, the financial assets, when your country has the capacity to handle it. And so this is actually, even though it sounds crazy that the 3rd poorest country on earth would establish a $96 billion sovereign fund, it actually makes sense. And my guess is the IMF and the World Bank will be pleased to hear this.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely like one of the things. Like, I mean, if the IMF and the World Bank are like, kind of the doting / cajoling grandparents of international development finance, like starting a sovereign fund seems like one of those things that, like, it's like the starting to journal,
Yes.
like it makes your grandparents very happy.
Starting to journal. Are you journaling?
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna be so glad someday when you look back and you'll forget all the things. I don't know.
Oh, I see. So your grandparents are from New York somewhere.
Like yeah.
You'll forget. Yeah. No, you're not. That's my boss. I just said, no, you're not. Okay. Now we're going to go straight to Oman. 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 Sorry. That was good. Okay.
Oman.
The town of Muscat, where I've been 2 times.
I want to go there so badly. It's supposed to have such cool, places
you
to
drive
explore.
in, and it's like Portuguese monuments up in the mountains above this like Middle Eastern, beautiful like architecture place. I mean, like I think when the Islamic countries come together, I think they come to Muscat. I think there is a giant like meeting venue there. Anyway,
yeah,
I could be wrong because we don't do the research here. We just report out on what we know. But Oman in 2020 decided to merge the Oman Investment Fund and the State General Reserve Fund to enjoy the benefits of scale and build the Oman Investment Authority. Very similar to the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority.
Omania.
Correct. But on April 24th, His Excellency Abdul Salam al-Murshidi, who I've met when I went to the Oman, has said we are going to split up this into 2 portfolios, one for domestic development and one for international assets. And to me, that sounds a little bit like going back to what they had. That's what they had before they did the merger. So I thought that was newsworthy for our little community to know that I know. I see what they're doing.
Yep.
They did the merger, and then they're like, it was kind of good before.
I liked how we just had a pool of money that we could go to when we wanted like a stadium built or something.
Yeah,
that was
the Oman Investment Fund.
Yeah,
and it was domestic, and it invested in domestic development.
Probably stadium, not a great example of domestic development.
That's like one of the worst.
Yeah, stadium is like if you want to like literally set your money on fire. It's the I don't know what a good worst thing is, but it's the frozen hot pocket of investment of infrastructure.
Went deep to find something bad. Not everybody will see the hot pocket as bad. Some people enjoy them, even though it burns your lips.
No, but like when I'm talking about like when you think it's cooked, but it's not really cooked, and you're like you bite through the hot, and then there's a little piece of cold. That's miserable.
That's when you thought you were going to create jobs in the local community, and all you have is a $300 million bond.
Yep, exactly.
And it's like
corruption.
It's a wasteland around the stadium that like nobody goes to. Anywho, next story is about women. Half the world population. That's not my story, but that's something.
You heard about these women?
I think that's true. Have you heard about them? They're out there. This one, I need to get serious because I don't want to be laughing while I say this in case it's taken out of context. According to a study by the Official Monetary and Financial Forum, also known as UNFIF, women sadly aren't making progress towards landing high-level, powerful jobs in the financial services industry. And UNFIF has something called a Gender Balance Index, which I thought is interesting. This year is the 9th running edition of the Gender Balance Index, and I figure like we should be tracking that index. It's a good index. I'm glad that good for UNFIF for like collecting the data. They track 335 institutions. So
wow,
UNFIF is doing some data analysis out there.
And these are asset owners or asset managers or just big employers?
I'm pretty sure it's one of the things you said. I haven't taken it to the thread.
So it's finance organizations we're tracking.
Okay, you know what? It says it in the blurb. Central banks, commercial banks, sovereign wealth funds, public pension plans. That's the list. Yeah.
Okay, so I would expect that to be slightly more gender balanced than the industry as a whole.
True statement. They're not doing hedge funds.
Yeah.
That's a very true statement. This year, it's 9th running. More than half the organizations saw their scores drop, not even hold steady. Sick. Oh, God. This is not sick, ladies and gentlemen. This is depressing.
Yeah!
I can remember being in like 4th grade when somebody was like, "That's bad." And I was like, "What? Like actually bad?" And they're like, "No, like bad means cool now." And I was
yeah.
This has gone too far. Anywho. Anyway, this is bad here because 1 in 10 institutions surveyed had no women at all in senior management or in the boardroom.
Wow.
And if you hear me poking my desk in the background, it's because I'm pretty upset about that.
It's perfect.
It's outrageous. And hopefully organizations like BlackRock, which have said they won't invest in companies that don't have 30% board diversity, which they define as people of color and women. And we joked, that's the goal. It's not 50%, but anywho, at least they're setting the target at 30%. There's 10% have 0%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I think that they could all take an example from us at the Free Money Podcast. I mean, we're about to do diversity by having our first male interviewee.
Yeah.
in
like a year. Yeah. No, my other favorite quote is 60% of the time. It works every time.
Well, I mean, like, you know, we got a guy who works. I mean,
what are we talking about today?
We got a segue that works.
A good job of like leading in. I think I'm.
Yeah. So we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about fish farms, and this is really fascinating. Well, let's let Grant in here, and he can tell us why the heck we would be talking about this.
Let's do it.
Grant,
this is perfect. He's not there. Oh, there he is.
He knows what's up with the show. He was.
We were hoping for a technical glitch. That would have been on brand.
I know.
Good to see you, Grant.
Can you hear me? Am I?
Oh yeah, no, you're coming through, which is shocking because we got you. We saw your mug, but the audience can't see you. So what we do is we describe you. You're wearing a nice sport coat. You've got a green shirt on. There you go.
And those like standing over a trash can fingerless gloves, which are really.
I prefer to think of them as flash dance for my hands.
That is flash dance for your hand.
Yeah,
I do. Oh, we're big flash dance here on the Free Money.
So, I mean, like, we did, as usual, a very elegant segue here, and I think that, like, you and I worked together on this, report and on this, but like maybe like just to kind of level set and like get the audience into what the heck is going on with the fish farm finance and why we got to fix it. Like,
how do we free money for the fish?
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. Well, maybe the best place to start is going back, basically to the beginning of my life, which is an interesting kind of early '80s. Flashdance is in theaters, and at the time. Thanks. Yeah. Well, we're just at the beginning of the satellite era, so that's where a lot of our research and understanding of the climate really starts to pick up steam. It's once in the early 1980s when we have kind of comprehensive coverage of the world in terms of a lot of geospatial and physical processes. And that was also a time for the same reasons, that same technology that allowed us to look at the whole world, allowed us to fish like crazy. And so we'd gotten to a point where we'd more or less overfished a lot of the world's main fisheries. So in 1982, 83, that was a really big El Nino year. And it was so big and bad, the overfishing at that time in Peru, that the entire Peruvian anchovy industry collapsed and was nationalized. So all of the biggest, some of the biggest, oceanic fish groups in the world were nationalized because they were functionally bankrupt after this big climate event. And that was a time when China was large in per capita consumption, but hardly existed on the world stage. Only 10% of the world's fish was consumed by China at the time. And it was basically all wild catch. We didn't really have aquaculture. Well, at that exact moment, there was a whole bunch of random Norwegian families and Scottish families who were playing around with throwing fish meal into the ocean into salmon in cages to see, what would happen. And so you can fast forward 30 plus years. Flashdance is as relevant as ever. And
fair.
And roughly two-thirds of our fish come from aquaculture today. Wow. And that's about 16% of animal protein overall. And so we've just since 2000, we've tripled the volume of aquaculture in the world. Well, the amount of fish that we catch from forage, so like those Peruvian anchovies, has fallen by about a third. And China is what China is today, which is absolutely dominates world consumption of fish. And despite all that growth, the entire industry sort of still remains weirdly financed by a small set of functionally, Norwegian folks. There's kind of 3 Northern European banks that dominate the financing for these operations globally. And those are DNB, Nordea, and Rabobank. So large banks on a regional basis, but not the largest banks in the world. And they provide this financing, and they have a real bias towards the species and locations where they feel most comfortable, which tends to be Northern Europe and in a select group of fishes. And if you're an economist, you know that whenever you see a weird financing, right, that's associated with capital constraint, and capital constraints are what make for extraordinary, never-ending seeming profit opportunities, whether it's a capital constraint in terms of a monopoly or something like that. Well, sure enough, salmon has had something like 24% return on invested capital over the last 20 or so years, which is enough to make it, a portfolio of salmon assets would perform as well or better as, the best picked stocks in US or European public markets. So if you had if your pension fund had just bought the licenses to a whole bunch of salmon farms in even 2000, you would have made a really extraordinary return. And people have noticed that, but and that segues into a little bit like Bain's experience in these markets. But maybe I'll stop there and ask if you guys have any questions about my 30 or 40 year history of fisheries.
I'm having a lot of fun picturing like a Scottish guy throwing salmon meal into the ocean, just like for
hoping for the best.
Yeah. I'm not gonna
either a sea monster comes out or we're gonna start a new industry.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like it's sort of like in Silicon Valley, you're like in a garage in Scotland, you're just like throwing fish meal into the ocean. But like I think like one of the things I want to make sure and ask about is like it seems like there's this inherent like sustainability linkage. Whenever we think about like how data is coming to bear here, right? Because like you mentioned, like the big black swan event was this like climate linked, bankruptcy of all of these Peruvian anchovies, I believe.
Yep.
And so like I guess talk to us a little bit about that. I know that like for instance, a lot of people who've seen Seaspiracy are like out here thinking, well, fishing nets are filling the ocean with microplastics. Rah! But yeah, how do you see this whole sustainability question in this?
Yeah, so I mean, one important benchmark for sustainability in general that a lot of people are looking at across a bunch of different industries is how fast has there been progress? Like, has there been appreciable progress? And maybe, maybe in certain parts of the energy world, you'd say, well, it doesn't really matter if there's progress. All this progress almost necessarily has to level out at a carbon footprint and an environmental footprint that we just can't accept for the long run. Like, even if you're making rapid progress, there's going to be limits to that progress, and we just can't tolerate it. I don't think that's the case in aquaculture more generally. So salmon's a really good example. In my when I first went into college and was reading papers about this for the first time, I was kind of fascinated. Going way back, I'm kind of a weenie for this sort of stuff. So, I'm the type of person who did read those papers. And I remember kind of in around 2000 when aquaculture in general, but salmon aquaculture in particular, was sort of taking off in terms of its contribution to our global consumption. There was a lot of concern, like this might be the equivalent of the ocean equivalent of like a Exxon, right? Like an operation that just at no point in the future could ever meaningfully contribute in a positive way to our overall well-being, as a global society. And in my lifetime, the ratio, one of the most important ratios in terms of the footprint of salmon, so it's called fish in, fish out. So it's the in kilograms, the amount of fish meal that you put into the system versus how many kilograms of salmon you get out. And that number's gone from something like 2.8 around 2000 to 0.8. So that means that we were burning, 2 kilograms of fish just to create 1 kilogram of salmon in 2000. And today, salmon on a whole is a net producer of fish. And that's the difference is made up for by soy in many cases and other plant-based proteins. So, you just have to ask, are you getting over really important thresholds that are meaningful, like that 1-for-1, where you're actually on net creating fish for the world? And, 2 is just that rate of progress. That rate of progress has been exceptional. And today, if you look around, you probably see very few industries that have a higher percentage of green bonds or green loan facilities financing their overall operations. I'm making fun a little bit of the cabal of Norwegian and Northern European banks that support this industry, but one thing that they've done an exceptional job at is routing a lot of interest and focus towards explicit green mechanisms built into their financing.
You mentioned that Bain had not that good of a time, though, when they tried to get into this. Surely no one on this podcast would like to hear a story about a private equity firm having a hard time.
Yeah. I'm there's part of me that's somewhat sympathetic to these folks because they started with what I think is a pretty good idea. I mean, we work really hard to write a 100-page paper that details in a lot of why you'd want to consider this as a really exceptional investment. But the devil is in those details. And, our team of oceanographers has real expertise on some important dimensions of how this industry works. And I would imagine that that's not true of some MBAs in Boston. Actually, there's plenty of good educated folks all over Boston. I'm from Boston, so I'm very partial to the city. But my guess is that they didn't have as strong a command of some of the technical nuances of the industry that they were walking into. And additionally, there's always, when you're the first mover, some sort of maybe adverse selection problem where the folks who are willing to sell you an asset that seemingly is an ATM for printing returns are probably the first ones to say yes to that offer, are probably the ones you shouldn't buy from. So in Bain's case, they bought a mid to large size Chilean operator about 7 or 8 years ago on the back of some success in turning around a feed producer. And the real exceptional returns are in that primary production, owning those farms. And Bain had seen this, and on that back of that, they said, all right, well, it's time to go in. What they found was that the operators were lying systematically about mortalities to regulators and modifying the seabeds in ways that were illegal. It was exposed through this big, excellent work of investigative journalism on the part of some Chilean newspapers. And fast forward to now, they're 7 or 8 years into their adventure. In addition to losing a bunch of different licenses and having to pay some very large fines, I think all of that has been a real distraction from actually growing an efficient operation, and their operation has continued to have real problems. So, in a highly volatile industry, a group with a 5 to 7 year time horizon, even if they're working on the promise of really great returns, their time horizon and their attention to detail just might not be great enough to overcome the challenges there, which is kind of what we ultimately like to help with for sustainability minded investors.
I just think it's so interesting to hear the 24% number that you threw out there on salmon performance. I've looked at something called blue bonds, which I think are interesting name for bond, a blue bond. And it's about clean water. If you need me to clear up the name there, it's clean water, the blue bond. And obviously there's a lot of water issues around fisheries and commercial fishing, but I want to just understand the performance opportunities, because another non sequitur here is in college I had a couple friends that would go fishing in Alaska and seemingly come back every fall with more money than they knew what to do with. They were literally drunken sailors when they got back because they had 30 or 40 grand. So I guess what I'm wondering is commercial fishing just a very lucrative thing to be doing in the world, generally? And then beyond that, when you start thinking about non-boat fishing and the fisheries, what geographies do people go after? And I guess what I'm trying to understand is, how do you access it as an investor? Do I need to go build these things? Is there greenfield risk and I have to actually build, or is there an ETF, a fisheries ETF? So I'm sorry, that was a lot of different things I just threw at you. Hopefully you're taking notes.
Yeah, there was a few questions in there.
Yeah, no, I do that. I do that to people.
So one of your questions was just is fisheries across the board really an extraordinary opportunity? And I think one of the reasons that institutional investors have a hard time accessing these returns is because you can't boil it down to a simple lesson like that, right? You can't say fisheries across the board is a great opportunity. There are definitely fisheries in the world where there's not really good underlying economics. And actually, if you'll permit me, I'll give you a little detour on supply and demand in salmon and what's driving those returns. So supply in the short term is more or less fixed. It takes 2 years to grow a salmon up to market weight. So, the decision to produce salmon or not, it's like people are talking about with the disruptions to world energy markets right now. A lot of the decisions about supply were made 2 years ago, and you can't really change them in the short term. In terms of demand, it's also very similar in the sense that demand is not very sensitive to price. You kind of just want, if you want your bagel, you just kind of want your bagel with lox. It's a luxury good. It doesn't really matter if it's double the price. It's still going to be a luxury good either way. So whenever you have that circumstance where supply is relatively fixed in the short term and demand's relatively insensitive to price, you can see huge disruptions. Like in salmon markets, the prices have more than doubled in the last couple months.
Months? I thought you were going to say years. Doubled in months.
I could pull it up, but we're going, but it was not too long ago that we were $5 per kilogram of salmon, maybe in the fall, and now we're at 12. So it has exactly the same type of economics that electricity production has, for example. One of the weird things about electricity is it has to be consumed at exactly the same moment it's produced, right? Supply and demand have to balance. And that's true of salmon too. You can't really store it. It loses tons of its value as soon as you freeze it. So fresh salmon is how most people consume it. And so it needs to be consumed within a couple weeks of it being taken out of the sea. So supply and demand always have to balance. And that creates these interesting economics.
I do enjoy smoked salmon though, Grant.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, you can have value added products that'll add some shelf life to it. But even your smoked salmon, it's not, there's not,
it's not going to last
shelf
forever.
stable.
Yeah.
Well, think of it this way. Like you can go into a 7-Eleven and get beef jerky that's been sitting on the shelf for months potentially, right? That doesn't really work for smoked salmon. Maybe there are some exceptions of salmon jerky, but that we don't really consume
into
it.
Salmon Slim Jim.
A salmon Jim.
Salmon Jim.
Maybe.
Not all our jokes are good.
I don't know. Maybe somebody likes that.
Salmon Jim. Okay, but just to nail this. If I want to start investing in salmon, I don't know if you're done with your detour yet, but I want to figure out how to get access to this little space. Do I have to buy the bonds from Rabobank?
Well, that's one opportunity, right? And functionally, they're kind of gatekeepers today. So I think ultimately what you'd want is for a suite of models, let's say, by a company mostly populated with oceanographers who democratize understanding of this stuff.
If only there were somebody who could help us with access to this data.
Yeah. Anybody? What do you do for a really good
example? Yeah, I know. Well, a really good example is catastrophe finance. So if you go back to the wake of Hurricane Andrew came through. It destroyed a lot of capital within the reinsurance industry. And in the years after that, in particular, a lot of reinsurers made a lot of money. You'll see Warren Buffett, crowing about how much money he was making in the world of reinsurance in the wake of Hurricane Andrew in 1992. Well, at the same time, a lot of structural engineers were hard at work building quantitative models that basically simulated a house getting smashed by a hurricane. And on that basis, they really democratized understanding of this industry. And through a select group of investment funds, slowly but surely, a large amount of pension fund money got moved into the world of catastrophe insurance and reinsurance, to the point where a lot of pension funds and endowments will have 1 or 2% of their assets in catastrophe reinsurance today, or some form of insurance type capital. And so the GPs in that circumstance were kind of, they were curating the output of these modelers. So the modelers had the real capability that was democratizing finance. And LPs at the time were not informed consumers of those models. So they needed GPs to stand in between them and the underlying risk. But fast forward to today, where catastrophe finance is not some extraordinary money-making opportunity. It's kind of a normalized piece of institutional portfolio, like I said, 1 or 2% overall. And a lot of LPs are sophisticated enough investors that they're just buying the catastrophe models themselves. So if you look at Canadian pension funds or Australian supers or a bunch of funds in the Netherlands. Like they are as sophisticated buyers of that type of intelligence as anybody else in the marketplace, and so they're cutting out as many middlemen as they can in terms of accessing the underlying risk that's made possible by a new suite of models. And we'd like to see the same sort of progression in the world of aquaculture and ocean-based finance in general, is have a suite of models and try and connect them to the most sophisticated people who today might be actually capable of seeing a new model and understanding what that unlocks in terms of financing.
That's interesting. You just mentioned a bunch of asset owner investors, where I would think of what you are describing in the aquaculture space as like a classic alternative market where you need kind of a specialized intermediary. Now, I'm not saying that the big asset owners wouldn't be there eventually. Like if you look at who owns timberland today, or who owns infrastructure. Although agriculture is still a bit of a laggard, I would say, and I would expect aquaculture even behind that. The asset owners are there, they're long duration assets, but it takes a specialized team. Like Nuveen, which was TIA, has done a very good job with agriculture, but they bought asset managers to do that. And so when I think about the space you're talking about, 24% returns, you need incredible domain knowledge. You need to subscribe to your data and your models to be really smart. We'll give you a plug here. Don't worry. This is the this is what we do.
I've spent a lot of time with this paper. It's great. Like there's some really cool
related
charts in
parties. Like we're gonna just go buy Grant's data if you want to make 24% a year. I think we can say that.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, like while we were working on the paper, I was like, hey, what if you guys just start a fund of your own?
But my point is, this is a classic alternative industry where it's like the information is hard to get, the market is opaque, people have lost their shirts doing it wrong. And so isn't that, I mean, wasn't Bain the right type of actor to go after it, actually, rather than the Canada Pension Plan? I mean, I like Canada Pension Plan, but...
I mean, conceivably, but I think that that there are a lot of sophisticated folks out there who are genuinely interested. I think that the rate of progress, and Ashby, I mean, you're much closer to these institutional allocators than I am, but my impression is they're getting up to speed with a lot of the specialized managers that they'd be working towards, that it's not crazy to imagine that in 10 years' time, they'd be as sophisticated in terms of frontline opportunities, navigating frontline opportunities as the actual GPs themselves, which isn't to say that we wouldn't work with GPs, but there's part of me that just loves inherently loves working with the lowest cost provider, that loves working with the most sophisticated, best aligned incentives possible. Like that's always really exciting.
So then I know I'm worried that I'm keep taking you further and then we're going to go over time, but with this one, just last one, and then back to you, Sloan. So the way that we really convince the asset owners to build up the capability to partner with you and go do this in the aquaculture space is we help them understand their comparative advantage relative to the intermediary space. And so then the question for you, Grant, is, does it help in this space to have a longer time horizon, so the patient hold, and does it help to have big check writing ability, or are these niche projects that begin to spin off cash in year two? Because if it's the niche projects in year two, then the pension funds may as well invest their time and effort on timberland, where it takes 50 years. Yeah.
So I mean, these are all capital intensive. So 50 to 75 basis points of a reasonable sized endowment, you could put that to work in buying assets today. Wow. Like a small mid-sized salmon company would take up that amount, right? So it's the right size to consider that. And yeah, like you're saying, the time horizon is such an important piece of this. with an industry that's as volatile as this one, that's subject to freezing events hitting Nova Scotia, or a algal bloom that knocks out of most of Chile for a year or two. You can imagine that a 5 to 7 year time horizon, which is kind of over, what a lot of private equity groups are looking at, that's probably too low to really, with any kind of confidence, access the extraordinary returns that are available. You need to push a little bit beyond that. And that's another reason why ultimately, I mean, my hope, who knows, but my hope is that this is appropriate for, longer term time horizon investors that are working at an institutional scale.
Beautiful.
One of the things that I think is just so interesting about this too is obviously longtime listeners of the show will know that I will probably not be eating this fish anytime soon. But, if you think about it, first of all, this, protein demand is not going away. Right. We have an overall need to do harm reduction as a society, but then when you started getting into the data on what makes individual properties better than others, one of the big things that really comes out is it's about like how many fish survive to maturity, yeah. Right? So the operating opportunity seems to be in some ways fundamentally aligned with certain interpretations of ESG. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, right? What's the built environment like where these things are? Who are the people that they're employing? How many other jobs are there in places where aquaculture is?
Yeah. So these are fundamentally what a fish farm today for salmon is kind of a bunch of large ringed cages that are sitting in a fjord somewhere in Norway or Scotland or Chile or the Faroe Islands or east and west coast of Canada. And there's usually a floating mobile home that's nearby that people are manning 24 hours a day, and they're feeding the fish whenever they can, whenever it's safe to, because there's not a low dissolved oxygen event or some other weird thing that's ongoing. And so these tend to be covering pretty remote communities that will often have pretty low educational attainment, relatively speaking. And also, like in places like Chile and in Canada, those are systematically also areas that have a lot of overlap with indigenous communities. So the west coast of Canada right now, there's been a big ruling just in the last couple of weeks. The Trudeau's government had announced an intention to phase out all net pen aquaculture in British Columbia. And there've been, indigenous communities actually on both sides of that. So some saying, listen, this is not the species of salmon that we grew up with. It's not part of our cultural identity. We are worried about the environmental impact. And then a lot of other people saying, this is the best employment opportunity available. And in many cases, we have equity stakes in the operations themselves. That's pretty common in Canada, that there'll be a revenue sharing agreement with the indigenous communities involved. So all that is to say that that those questions are, again, it's like over and over again, the devil is in the details. Like what you make of the sustainability is a function of how well you run your farm, and how well you run your farm has a lot to do with like nitpicky issues related to low dissolved oxygen or all these other technical concerns. And it's similar from the kind of governance standpoint, which is, you've got a really wide range of stakeholders involved, some of whom really like this is core to their identity, and some people who, for the same reasons, don't see it as an important contribution to the economy that they want to grow in their community over time. On balance, I would say that you see the communities that still have additional room, places like Newfoundland, are expanding their salmon footprint today. But a lot of places like Norway, there's just not a lot more space for additional. There's not a lot of hidden fjords out there that that nobody has yet explored, or there's reasons why they aren't. So it's up against a limit in some cases against expansion.
Mm. Well, just a fascinating story. Thank you so much for hopping on Das Pod and
awesome.
And telling the family about it.
Yeah, we want to unlock capital for more sustainable fisheries. It's awesome.
Yeah, eat fish, not cows. Eat fish, not cows. I mean, eat neither, but if you have to eat one, eat fish, not cows.
Thanks,
thank you so much, Grant.
Really
we'll
appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you, Ashby.
Bye.
Oh yeah. One of the things that really jumped out at me in that interview was he threw out a benchmark for sustainability of has there been progress?
Yeah, that was cool.
Which I think that's a really important thought to put a pin in and think about, because it's a useful mental model for anything.
Totally.
Right?
We forgot to ask him a garden
Fuck!
tip.
No.
We are not good at doing podcasts.
We're not good at doing maybe we're the only people who could give garden tips.
Maybe. You know what? That's what we were gonna ask everybody for a garden tip, and now it's done. We're not gonna do that.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah, it's too complicated.
The other thing that I liked, he talked about floating homes.
Floating mobile homes. Yeah.
And I was like, houseboat?
Yeah, that sounds cool as hell.
Yeah. Is that like a yacht? I want to chill out on a floating mobile home. I think it's called a boat.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, as Grant would say, the devil's in the details here.
Oh, true.
True.
When you see it, you're like, oh, actually, it is just a floating mobile home.
That really does seem like a floating mobile. Yeah, exactly. It's none of the charm of the Dutch, houseboats here.
The Senator Mansion variety of houseboat.
Oh God.
Oh, sorry.
God.
Did I do that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good that he lives in a houseboat. Anyway, let's talk about hard things. What's been hard for you this week? I mean, you just had a very good thing. I imagine that was a hard thing.
True. A little foreshadowing there. So we Long Game, which I think longtime listeners will have heard. CEO of Long Game has been on this pod, and many will know that I am a co-founder and board member of Long Game, and we sold to Truist, which is the sixth biggest bank in America, and Truist is going to build out the app and continue to try to help Americans save money through games, which is a crazy concept. But this is the hard thing segment, and I can tell you, boy, was it hard. And I actually wrote down, I'm glad you raised that one, because I wrote it down that, now I've started a few companies and managed to land them in other companies, i.e. sell them. It is so different and hard compared to raising money for a startup. One is I don't know, everything is upside. When you're raising money for a startup, everything is what could this be? Think about the possibilities. And when you're trying to sell your company, or you're in discussions to sell your company, it's like negotiating a prenup. It's tell me what could go wrong. And so it's actually quite a different mindset when you're going into those conversations. And I think the M&A process, now that I've been through it a few times, is a much longer process than fundraising. So you entrepreneurs out there, know that you can't be well, if I don't raise money, I'll just sell my company. It's actually almost a longer process to sell your company than it is ever to get through a fundraise. In both the cases, for me, with RCI at Adipar and now Long Game to Truist, multi-year relationships that were established and then nurtured, and in some cases commercial terms were established for one of them, and then at the end it's maybe we really should come together and build something, and that feels like dating towards a marriage, with a negotiation around a prenup. So that's hard. You're right to point out. Very hard.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you don't really think about it that way because it's sort of like the glamorous. It's like retirement. You ascend into the heavens and you've had an exit.
Yeah, you had an exit, and it's like, oh man, did that just come together? And you're like, I've been working on that for 2 years.
Yeah, and like God, I've almost died.
Yes, yes. I have lost for long game. I think I've lost months of sleep, not days of sleep.
Yeah, I mean, any good kid, you're gonna lose some sleep over, right?
It's true.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. I guess what's been hard around here is I've recently this is like a little bit of foreshadowing maybe for the Free Money podcast.
Okay.
I've recently learned about merch a little bit.
Wow.
And in particular, I've realized that I can stick up posters that have Invest Vegan stuff on them around Brooklyn, and then people will see them at their coffee shop. And
oh my God.
Clients. So I've been ordering like cute posters and stuff like that to put up in places. But goddamn, if I haven't discovered like this perfect knack for ordering the thing to get printed right before I find a typo in it.
Ooh.
Yes. And so, yeah, it's like, I mean, it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not the biggest thing in the world, right? I mean, the markets are down a bunch, there's all sorts of big thorny questions stuff, but those are kind of like in scope for being an asset manager, right? You sort of expect that you're going to have periods of time when like the market is bad and everyone hates stocks. And, if you're a stocks person, then, you just sort of like look weird for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And then it'll be fine again, but like when you take on that marketing dimension on the side and you're thinking like, I literally have 150 pieces of paper that have this like typo on them now, and it's like, okay, so am I going to creatively repurpose these? Like, I've caused them to be print, or do I just like write it off, take the L like a true woman of business, and it's like, I don't know why I feel that this is such a big ethical conundrum,
I get it.
But
and here you tell your story. I don't want to make this about me because I love that you're out there, and part of me wants to like, let's go get a billboard together. The co-sponsored billboard, Free Money Podcast with Invest Vegan.
Shit!
Why not? It's going to be like $24 based on my zero knowledge. Maybe it's more than that. But I have to tell you a story. When I was doing my PhD at Oxford, we were super pumped when we could get business cards. And my good friend and co-author, Adam Dixon, very dear friend of mine, we actually lived in Paris together, and then we lived in Oxford together, and we did the same doctorate program. So it was very, very fun. I was at the department. We ordered our business cards, and I sent him this email. I got both of our business cards. Hey, I got your business cards. I got bad news. There's typos in both of our business cards. And I was like, man, they messed up my fax machine.
Oh, no.
And they've got your name listed as Adma Dixon. And I just thought that was so funny because nobody cares about the fax machine.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, exactly. It's like, and if someone tries to send you a fax, you know what? They don't deserve to get in touch with you. Yeah.
But like, I sold it like we both got screwed by the business card people, I was they got my fax machine wrong and they got your name wrong.
Equally harmed by this.
We're both screwed.
Yeah, so is your friend Adma, like just having a nice time with his life now?
He is out there. He lives in the Netherlands. His life is good. Yeah, he's good. He's having great. I don't know if he's a listener. So Adma, if you're out there, but I literally had his email as Adma Dixon. I think to this day, if I was going to write an email in Gmail, it would be like, "Is that Adma you're trying to reach?"
Yep.
Because of that moment. Anyway.
Yep. Anyway, well, I think that it's time. I think it's time we had a sound effect.
I think you nailed that one. I feel like the last few, they kind of get muffled in the pod.
Yep. Well, see, the thing is, like, I'm not recording this on my phone this time.
Interesting.
It's this weird thing I'm trying where my computer works as we're recording the show. But anyway, this is the Dear Ashby segment of the show. It is one of our signature segments that we absolutely never forget to do.
No, we don't. We always do this one.
Yeah, and that's how you know it's a real segment.
Yes.
And if you would like to ask a question in an upcoming episode, please do send us an email, freemoneypod@gmail.com, or go to freemoneypodcast.com and just fill out the little form and and ask a question. It can be absolutely whatever you want, and Ashby will answer it, and then we will vamp on it, and then we will answer the next question.
That's how questions and answers work, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right.
Always good to give people the rules of Q&A,
Yeah, exactly. And just so you know, this podcast works better with the volume on.
And 1x speed. We do not like how we sound at 2x.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay, so here's this first one. How much stock do you put into those various pension indices that compare various countries on a range of things? Like, this is like the vaguest question I've ever seen.
Oh, but I love it. I love the listeners that ask the questions. It's a good question.
This is it is good.
There's a lot that goes into this. This is where I begin my soliloquy. There's a lot that goes into this, dear listeners, because pension funds have contribution rates, investment return rates, and replacement rates, which is how much of your ending salary or blend of the last few years' salary are you expected to replace in retirement. And a pretty good replacement rate, I would argue, is around 65, 70%.
Yep.
And so I put some stock in those indices that talk about replacement rates, but it's not enough to just think of it as a replacement rate. You have to go back and look, like, how much money did we take from these people when they were, they had kids trying to go to college? Were we like taxing them to the bejesus in order to fund their retirement? So there's got to be a give and take here. And obviously the investment performance is the thing I spend most of my life on. So I'll tell you the invention that I stole from Hugh O'Reilly, former podcast guest, I believe, the Canada
podcast
episode.
Guest extraordinaire. Yes, the explaining the Canadian pension model with trademark Canadian politesse.
And I actually put what I'm about to describe you in a paper, and I believe I acknowledged him, but I may not have because it was just might have been confidential. It might have been a confidential conversation that we had, so I had to anonymize it. But here's all the credit in the world. He had this idea of a pension health metric where he said, look, you can't just look at funding. You have to look at funding and discount rate together. Because if you have a high discount rate, then you'll look funded. If you have a low discount rate, then you'll look underfunded. But if you look fully funded with a low discount rate, then you've got a really healthy pension plan. And that's what he was always trying to do at OP Trust. And so I always thought, and maybe this is the part I invented, you could create a ratio based on that, where you look at the funding level. So is it 100% funded, 105% funded in the Netherlands? Or is it, like Chicago, 25% funded? And then you would divide that by the discount rate, the expected return target. And so a very healthy fund would be like 25% or 25. Sorry, this is the ratio, 25.
Yep.
And a very unhealthy plan would be 5, for example.
Gotcha.
And I think that, like, if we could do a global benchmark of the defined benefit plans using that type of a pension health, I would put huge amounts of stock in it. But I don't think that's out there. So the answer to the question is no, I don't actually take that much interest in these, aside from like anecdotes.
Well, and like, I think that one of the things that really, grinds my gears about them is that the conclusions are often very similar. Like, yeah, we know the Netherlands has a great pension system.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, it's like, okay, the places where there's no litter in the streets, they have great pensions. Wow, that's a shock.
Exactly.
And like the places where they have no social safety net, they have high savings rates. Wow. And I think that for producing decision relevant information, that they can often kind of fall behind. And it would be great if you're out here working for some sort of like nonprofit advocacy group or something like that. You're trying to come up with some thought leadership to do. That would
pension
be a good report.
Health Index.
Pension health. It's free. It's free.
By
money.
the way, you just mentioned a segment we don't do anymore.
What?
Did you hear it?
And
grinding gears.
Grinding gears. Oh wow!
I think we used to do a grinding gears. That might
that was the news.
Time.
Yeah, that was that.
No, that was the top. I think that
the
was
top.
Like,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
top.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's
Good
grinding your
times.
gears?
Good
I mean,
times.
another masterful segue from the Free Money Podcast. This is a great question. Can you think of a time when someone really put the douche in fiduciary? What was / is the circumstance?
I love it. I'm picturing somebody just had like a funny thought and was then like, "Who can I ask this to?" You know?
Yeah. And that's the energy we're trying to pick up on here.
And I also think more of my thinking on this is like, I think we need a segment called fiduciary. Fiduciary.
Fiduciary of the week.
Yeah, exactly. We just point out a pension. Anyway, to answer this brilliantly posed question, I think whenever the fiduciaries say that they aren't paying attention to shit that's good for the world because of their obligations, which used to happen all the time on climate, still happens on things like diversity and, inclusion. And they say, "Oh no, I'm a fiduciary, and I can't. This is going to take hold. I think.
I love this. I fucking love this. This
is going to be bigger than F-anon.
Yeah. No. This is the next F-anon, right? You heard it here first. I mean, the fiduciary movement really has been just remarkably powerful over the years, and I mean, they have inhibited a great deal of social progress.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's not 2 or 3 years ago. I was still hearing, certain pension funds saying things like, "How do I get this climate thing to go away?" And it's like, change your portfolio, dude. Get net zero, like all those kinds of things. That's how it goes away. It doesn't go away by just thinking about how I placate stakeholders. That's how you're a fiduciary.
Yeah. How do I tick the box here? Oh man, I'm picturing the fiduciary X-Men or what the evil X-Men. I don't know. There's you got box ticker. The
Kung Fu Panda skadoosh.
Oh,
there's that vibe here, which I think it's fiduciary.
Fidoosh.
Yeah, Jack Black vibe.
Yeah. That tracks. All right, so
keep that in mind for your poster printing operation.
That's a good point. Maybe I'm just gonna print up big posters that say "fidoosh" and put them up everywhere. I could be a lot more guerrilla about the Free Money Podcast than I can about my regulated asset management business.
Yeah.
This is the last question. I think I'm sure everybody's wondering this. Would you ever grow mushrooms? How would you do it? Do you know how to do it? Is it too scary? What are you thinking about the mushrooms?
I had a friend in college who, for legal reasons, I will keep anonymous.
You're talking about the psychedelic mushrooms.
He grew mushrooms in his dorm room closet. And I'll tell you, I thought that was a very poor life choice. Because, first of all, you get caught with that shit, it's trouble.
Oh, yeah.
And, my God, we were 20. Lord knows, you do not have the controls in place next to your sneakers. Anyway, he survived. He's out there. So that's the good. But so I think I'm afraid, but I think I'm also willing to try. So I think if you gave me a controlled environment and you're just look, it's just like cooking. Here's the soil. Here's how much you water. Here's how you do it. I would try it because I love mushrooms. I mean, I really do enjoy to grilling up mushrooms and putting it, on different sandwiches, whatever it is. I do love them, but I am afraid that I would kill myself.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the vibe with mushrooms. It's and that's why they're known as the gay. The gay kingdom. I don't know. That's not true at all.
That's not true. Oh my God.
No. I mean, I don't know. Mushroom. Yeah, mushroom. You know what they are? They're aromantic and whatever. I'm not doing this allegory, but I have seen setups where people get logs that they inoculate with spores, and then if they have a backyard or something like that, they just they'll have maybe 100 square feet, 200 square feet of mushroom wood, and then Yeah, and then they'll just like go out and like grab the mushrooms when they want them. You know, we got a Christmas gift from one of my aunts, like a mushroom growing kit.
That's not
Um,
bad.
it was great. Yeah, we had trumpet mushrooms growing in our kitchen, and like, you know, we made a bunch of, we fried them up, and you know, it tastes like fried chicken.
Yeah.
Get some
downside-
risotto.
Yeah, exactly. Get some, get some nice like vitamin D in your bloodstream. I would do it outside if I were to do it again. I mean, just because like
it's
you
musky.
know, it's not that it's musty. It's you got to mist it, and like, you know, we basically ended the experiment when we accidentally sprayed our like household vinegar cleaner on the mushrooms, and they didn't like, you know, I mean, so
Yeah,
it's like
that's not good. Don't eat
Yeah,
those.
it's not like a chill, like, you know, oh, we'll just put a pothos like right here in this, you know, a mushroom is a big operation. But if you have the space, you know, listener, check out the inoculated mushrooms. I think you'll you'll find some interesting shit there.
That wasn't even our garden tip.
No, I think
Which
they
is
have
coming
some
up
inoculated. I think they have inoculated mulch too. Now,
I bought mulch on the weekend.
that's the good shit right there.
We're going into garden tip.
What kind of garden tips you got?
I was re-listening to one of the garden tips so that I make sure I don't repeat my garden tips.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
one of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
things
yeah.
I do for the listeners, because sometimes I'm like, did I already do that garden tip? And I heard our sound effect for garden tip was garden tip. Like it was the monster truck.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh man, we got to get a monster truck guy. We got to get more voice actors in on this bitch. But yeah, like what you know, give me the goods.
Okay,
I mean,
I got it. Here, I got it because I want to tell people about drought resistance plants. And because my wife and we were at the Home Depot, aka Home Depot, on the weekend, and we always gravitate towards the drought resistant plants because we live in California.
Mhm.
And first of all, our soil is a horrific combination of clay and cement, and our rain is irregular and light, so we get like less than 10 inches a year some years. So it's really important to have trees that can survive in crappy soil, or bushes that can survive in crappy soil, and very little water. And so I want to put out the free money endorsement on tea trees. Tea trees that go by the Latin name of Leptospermum, and that's not why I selected it, but I noted it.
After he's like walking through the nursery, you're like, all right, which one of these is like the closest to dicks?
I just noted it in case you needed to find it. It is the craziest name I've heard in a while. But anywho, the tea tree, it's got lovely pink little flowers. It is pest-free, drought-resistant. It grows in poor soil. I'm still talking disease-free. It attracts butterflies. It's still going. Deer resistant is one of the things.
I think you meant to say drought resistant, but I prefer to believe that it's doubt resistant.
It is. You can't. I meant doubt. You just have to believe in this truth.
You cannot doubt it.
Yeah, there's no. Yeah, I did. Yeah, lovely little pink flowers too, which you don't doubt. Don't doubt it.
It sounds delightful. I mean, like I mean, what a beautiful little.
Yeah,
what a beautiful
and so
little
right
baby.
now, if you Google it, you will see these gorgeous little pink flowers, and it covers the entire bush. And these bushes grow like 10 feet tall.
Wow.
And so we're just thrilled. We had two actually we have 4 in the yard right now. They're all gorgeous and blooming. So we went and bought 2 more. And it's called tea tree because the Australians and New Zealanders used to soak the leaves in boiling water to make herbal tea. Apparently it's pretty good. I haven't tried it yet, but you know.
Well, but I mean, yeah, you get, if you know, when the world really ends, you can make your own tea tree shampoo and like all sorts of other good stuff.
Yes.
I mean, plus, I mean, like I think there are a lot of trees that, you know, we have like these common, you know, medicinal uses for, like witch hazel, that are actually just super beautiful and drought resistant. Like hell freaking yeah, I love a good tea tree.
You were familiar already.
I mean, like I actually learned about the tea tree in high school when like somebody got these really good tea tree dipped, like what's it called, toothpicks that we're all obsessed with.
Yeah,
it was like it was like really good. But So yeah, it's been a little bit of a thing. But my tip
for those of you with cowboy hats and boots that need a good
exactly.
toothpick.
If you're really trying to like rough it, put out a vibe. So it may be too late where you are, various listeners in the country, but I would say one of the most important things that I do as a gardener is keep track of what's going on at like my local botanical gardens. And like, kind of in New York City, we're very fortunate that we have Snug Harbor, which is run by the Smithsonian in Staten Island.
Wow.
That's like a really, really nice conservatory. And then we also have the Queens Farm in Queens, which has been continuously farmed for like 300 or 400 years. Both of those places do plant sales every spring and fall. So like in the spring, you can go and get a whole bunch of really cool plants, usually picked by somebody who's got like just a dorky interest in cool plants. And so like if you are fortunate enough to have the inn, you can get yourself like a pretty reliable source of like hard to find, not that typical well-grown, organically grown stuff. So and that's like my gardening has been really, really elevated by access to those folks, especially around stuff like compost, because there is a degree to which like, not to like burden the metaphor about, gardening is just like investing too much, but like you do need a community of other practitioners.
Yeah.
To learn from. And, like if you have people in your local environment that are dealing with the same soil conditions, that are like, and sitting like I guarantee you within 100 miles of almost everybody, there's somebody who's sitting there hard thinking about how do we bring native, comfortable wildlife back into this area.
Totally.
And maybe even organizing semi-annual plant sales about it. So don't sleep on that.
I'm going to call it. That's the tip of the day. You nailed it.
Tip of the day.
Because I find now that I go to the garden store so much, they are very seasonal relevant. Like they know what needs to be going in the ground. Those plants are out. And so you're walking through and it's like all curated. It's not like this is what it looks like all the time. Like every 2 weeks, they're changing what's going on. And the people you're talking to usually are like pretty avid and know what they're doing. So the garden store is usually a fabulous reference point for, first of all, like what is local and what you should be putting in the ground.
Yeah.
And second of all, like what is timely.
Yeah. Because like you gotta get your strawberries in. Like there's there's an ancient rhythm to this.
Yeah.
That one only learns through repetition. And like I had no grounding in this when I started.
No, me neither. No.
Yeah, but the garden center always a source of good vibes.
For
and
sure.
local compost interest groups. You might find some dirty smelling people, but I'm sure they'll all be very nice.
You might find some posters with an occasional misspelling around.
Oh yeah, exactly. You might not.
You might see a misspelled poster to invest with vegans.
Yeah. Well, the thing that really sucks is I made it complimentary, like I spelled it wrong. So I really look like an idiot because it's just it's a very noticeable typographical error, I find. Anyway.
Yeah.
I will hang my head in shame until the end of time.
Yeah, this is hard.
Keep will. No, it's because I'm bad, Ashby. it's because God hates fags. Really.
Oh!
No.
On that note.
Yeah, on that note, God loves the fags and I love all of you. Bye.
We love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking like money. Now make it rain on 'em.